Everyone knows about inflation now. We make fun of it because there's eggflation, there's this inflation, there's that inflation too. So here's a quick video on what your salary looks like based on inflation too in the future. So I just took an even number here, $100,000 basically, and then we're going to time travel out, and in 30 years we're going to see what that actually looks like based on today's value and factoring in future inflation of somewhere between 2 and 3%, obviously. So if you look below, here's what it is. If you currently make $100,000 in 20 years from now, to make the same money, have the same lifestyle essentially after factoring inflation, meaning that things will get more expensive over time, your salary needs to be about 182 grand. And that's with 2% inflation, which is the target by our governments essentially. Now, if there's 3% inflation, your $100,000 needs to be about 245 to equal the same today. So you have the same purchasing power as you do today, meaning you have the same lifestyle essentially. May seem drastic, but it is what it is too. It's going to happen. So here's a few things you can do to make sure. Hey everyone, meet my intern George here. He likes to get kind of loud. Anyway, there he is. That's George. He's usually sleeping. Okay, so to combat inflation, what you want to focus on is consistent investing, of course. You want to attempt to achieve annual raises every year of 2 to 3%, typically at least. If you can get more, wonderful. It means you're coming out ahead. Typically, those salaries are just going to pace inflation. So really, truly, the way to get ahead is by investing, of course, for yourself. Now, job hopping, when it's appropriate on salary, is not a bad move to do, every 2 to 3 to 4, maybe 5 years or so. Now, factoring that job hop, you want to at least go for, like I said, if you can expect a 2 to 3% annual raise per year, but you can bump your salary up by somewhere closer to 10% probably is what I would target personally by moving jobs. The grass may be greener, it may not be greener, but at least your compensation is 10% higher. That could get you there faster, basically, by doing that every 2 or 3 years, essentially. Now, paying down debt obligations obviously helps a ton. So consumer debts first, technically then autos obviously are wealth destroyers, to get rid of those. And then the last thing is going to be your mortgage too. It's okay to put a little extra towards that mortgage, in the latter years, essentially. Based on that interest rate, especially if it's a higher rate interest. If you have one of those 2 to 3% interest rates on mortgages, I really wouldn't rush paying that down. I'd rather you invest instead, to be honest. But it's okay to do that when you're gearing up for retirement. So maybe you're 5 years out from retirement, push some extra towards that mortgage, get it done. Okay, and then last thing you can do to combat inflation, of course, too, outside of these, is just increase your retirement contributions. So set up an annual increase on your 401k or your retirement vehicle through work. Up your dollar amounts that you're doing monthly into your Roth or your brokerage accounts as well at your independent custodians, and let it do the rest. Because ideally, your investments, inflation is 2 or 3% a year, and yes, things get more expensive, and yes, that eats into your current salary, so you don't feel like you're getting ahead. But the way to get ahead is through consistent investing, because it's reasonable that your investments can pick up somewhere between 7 and 12% a year, roughly, in the markets. And that is higher than inflation. And it's also higher than you can typically get in compensation yearly or even from job hopping occasionally. Hope that helps you guys with your battle on inflation.